Hello everyone. Welcome to the online class of Gerontology of TCM. Today we will learn about the comprehensive geriatric assessment. First, let's learn about the basic concepts of comprehensive geriatric assessment. The content roughly involves definitions, purpose and meaning, objects, people and processes, etc. The Comprehensive Geriatric Assessment, or the English abbreviation CGA, refers to using multidisciplinary comprehensive diagnosis methods to assess the physical, functional, mental and social environment of the elderly, and to formulate and launch a prevention plan for the purpose of protecting the health and function of the elderly, maximize the functional level and quality of life for the elderly. The comprehensive geriatric assessment is different from the traditional medical evaluation, and includes non-medical evaluations, such as social service evaluation, intelligence scale evaluation derived from sociology, and functional evaluation derived from rehabilitation medicine. The comprehensive geriatric assessment emphasizes the functional status and quality of life of the elderly. The purpose of CGA is to be able to identify and discover all existing and potential problems of the elderly timely. In addition, there are many goals in CGA, such as improving the accuracy of disease diagnosis, the activity of daily living and cognitive functions, quality of life, reducing medical needs and costs, enhancing the suitability of the living environment, increasing the availability of home health care and social services, etc. CGA aims at the frail elderly who have complicated diseases, such as many chronic diseases, geriatric syndromes, accompanied by different degrees of functional impairment and psychological and social problems, and have certain recovery potential. CGA is mainly implemented by an evaluation team composed of geriatric general practitioners, geriatric nurses, social workers, and geriatric psychiatrists. The content includes the physical, functional, psychological and social aspects of the elderly. The process of comprehensive geriatric assessment is generally composed of submission, initial evaluation, specialist examination, re-evaluation and follow-up. Next, let's talk briefly about CGA-related content. There are roughly 7 parts, namely activity of daily living assessment, balance and gait assessment, audio-visual ability assessment, cognitive function assessment, depression and anxiety assessment, social assessment, and home environment, etc. The activity of daily living of the elderly is affected by age, vision, motor function, disease factors, and emotional factors. Therefore, the evaluation of ADL of the elderly should be comprehensively combined with physical, psychological and social health. The ADL assessment includes 3 levels: basic activity of daily living, instrumental activity of daily living and advanced activity of daily living. 1 Basic activity of daily living, BADL, refers to the self-care ability and the most basic self-care ability needed to maintain basic life, such as bathing, dressing, grooming, getting out of bed, relieving oneself and eating, etc., which can be measured with Barthel Index and Katz Index scale. 2 Instrumental activity of daily living, IADL, refers to the ability of the elderly to live independently at home, which includes content not covered by BADL, including shopping, house cleaning, using the phone, cooking, doing laundry and traveling, etc., which can be determined with Lawton Scale. 3 Advanced activity of daily living, AADL, refers to more complicated activities of the elderly, including participation in social, recreational and professional activities, which is one of the indicators that reflects the overall health status of the elderly. There is currently no relevant scale available for AADL, but it can be roughly known by observing the daily activity schedule of the elderly. Balance and gait assessment mainly focus on the elderly's ability to move, including movement, gait, and balance so as to understand the risk of falling. Falling may lead to fractures, soft tissue damage, brain damage and death, and is the 3rd leading cause of chronic disability in the elderly. The screening process for balance and gait assessment is roughly as follows: screening questions, preliminary screening test, stand-up walking test, 5 sit-up tests. Timing balance test. Tinetti Gait Balance Scale. The Tinetti Gait Balance Scale not only detects the presence or absence of movement obstacles, but also quantifies its severity, to identify the most susceptible parts of gait and balance items. Help to formulate prevention plans. Audio-visual ability assessment 1. Evaluation of visual function. 20% minus 30% of the 75-year-olds have visual impairment. Visual impairment not only causes falls and car accidents, consuming a lot of medical resources, but also causes serious damage to activity of daily living and reduces the quality of life. The assessment and screening process for visual function is roughly as follows. Screening questions. Preliminary screening test. Standard logarithmic visual acuity chart. Rosenbaum visual acuity screening form. Through relevant specialist examinations to clarify the cause. To evaluation of hearing function. 30% minus 50% of the elderly have hearing impairments. Hearing impairments are related to cognitive impairment and decreased mobility. They can also cause psychological problems such as family discord, separation from society, loss of self-esteem, and depression. The assessment and screening process for visual function is roughly as follows. Screening questions. Whispering test. Preliminary screening test. Simple senile hearing impairment scale HHIFS. Further relevant specialist examinations to clarify the cause. 3. Cognitive function assessment. Cognitive function decline in the elderly is very common and can be seen in dementia, delirium, depression, language disorders, inattention, and low education. Dementia is very common among the elderly, with a prevalence rate of 6% in those 65 years old and a prevalence rate of 30% in those 80 years old. Due to the slow progress over the course of the disease, simple medical history and location tests are not sufficient to confirm the diagnosis. Studies have shown that 37% minus 80% of dementias are not clinically diagnosed, but they can be detected by screening tools, suggesting that it is difficult to find cognitive dysfunction without screening tools. Cognitive function assessment is one of the important methods for early detection and diagnosis of dementia. The diagnosis of dementia also requires comprehensive evaluation, including physical and neurological examinations, medication history, functional status assessment, and cognitive function assessment. The screening process for the assessment of cognitive function is roughly as follows. Screening questions. Preliminary screening test. Mini mental state examination MMSE. Mini cognitive evaluation of dementia. Mini cog. Clock draw test. Central daylight time. Further examination. When the primary screening test indicates cognitive dysfunction, the occurrence time, speed, and impact on work and life should be known furtherly. The Cognitive Abilities Screening Instrument, CASI, may be used to understand the severity of dementia. We can use the Clinical Dementia Rating, CDR, when assessing the cause of dementia. In addition to biochemistry and neuroimaging, the Hachitsky-Ischemia Scale, HIS, may be also used to assess the possibility of vascular dementia. Depression and Anxiety Assessment 1. Evaluation of depression. Depression is usually closely related to physical diseases and psychological factors. When the clinical manifestation is not typical, misdiagnosis or misdiagnosis usually happens. Patients with severe depression have a tendency to self-harm or suicide, which demands enough attention. The evaluation and screening process for depression is roughly as follows. Screening questions. Preliminary screening test. Hamilton Depression Scale HAMD, Zung Self-Rating Depressive Scale SDS and Geriatric Depression Scale GDS-15. Further examination, medication, spirit status, comorbidities, risk of suicide. 2. Anxiety assessment. Anxiety is one of the most common affective disorders in the elderly, especially in hospitalized elderly patients whose incidence rate exceeds that of depression. Anxiety symptoms can be the clinical manifestation of certain physical diseases. It can also be a kind of emotional disorder caused by psychological factors, social factors, or environmental factors. The screening process for anxiety assessment is roughly as follows: screening questions, initial screening test, Hamilton Anxiety Scale, HAMA, and Self-Assessment Scale, SAS, further examination, spirit, medication, symptoms. Social assessment is to assess the social support system, roles and role adaptation of the elderly, including the social support, social and cultural conditions, economic conditions, caregivers' burden, and the safety of home environment of the elderly. Home environment. The environmental assessment of the elderly mainly includes the safety of the environment and the availability of resources. Environmental assessment is very important for the elderly to prevent falls and facilitate life. The content involved includes aisles, rooms, beds, toilets, and so on. In summary, we have learned the basic concepts, related content, various assessment and screening processes, as well as scale applications. I hope you will take time to digest and summarize them after class. Okay, that's all for today's class. Thank you.